Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a really rigorous, ancient 16-step framework, and it's designed for one specific thing, the absolute preservation of human vitality. In the source material, this is called Virya Raksha. Now, if you've ever felt like your focus is just constantly hijacked by modern distractions, this traditional approach to extreme self-mastery, it's going to be a seriously fascinating lens to look through. To make sense of the text's rather dense list of 16 distinct rules, we've organized them into a logical thematic system for this explainer. We'll be looking at 1. The philosophy and the problem. 2. The physical routine. 3. Mental discipline. 4. Spiritual practices. And finally, number 5, the ultimate result. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the philosophy and the problem. Let's start by understanding exactly how the source material defines true vitality and the distracting ailments it fundamentally wants to cure. You know, what's truly striking here is just how absolute the text is about this concept. According to the source, Virya Raksha, which translates roughly to the protection or preservation of vitality, is not just some optional wellness trend. Not at all. It's presented as the absolute foundation required for human flourishing. The text explicitly states that without preserving this vitality, achieving enthusiasm, sheer physical strength, high intellect, or frankly any success in studying or yogic practices is simply impossible. It's basically the core engine for a disease-free life. The text sets up this really sharp contrast. On one side, you have the ideal state, a human operating at peak enthusiasm, absolute physical strength, and high intellect. Sounds great, right? But on the other side, a deeply distracted state. It describes youth falling into bad company, which leads to uncontrollable physical urges, nocturnal emissions, and a rapid, almost complete depletion of their vitality. And the source makes a fascinating claim here. It actually states that when vitality is lost through these kinds of distractions, it leads to deep-seated ailments that standard medicines simply cannot fix. So the cure literally has to be behavioral. So how do we fix it? Well, to combat this widespread loss of control, the text prescribes exactly 16 specific rules. Now, if you were to just read them as a giant list, it can feel, honestly, a bit overwhelming. So for our explainer today, we've categorized them into 3 highly actionable pillars of self-mastery. We've got the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. Breaking it down this way really lets us see exactly how holistic this ancient framework truly is. Section 2. Physical routine. This first pillar focuses heavily on the body, laying out some incredibly strict physical guidelines for your daily habits, what you consume, and how you handle hygiene. The recommended physical routine begins long before your alarm clock would normally go off. Step 1 mandates an early wake-up, and we're talking at least 1 full hour before sunrise. But you aren't just waking up to sip a latte and scroll on your phone. No way. Step 2 requires getting right out into the fresh morning air and walking for several miles. Then, Step 3 compounds this with a really serious commitment to physical exertion. The text specifically calls out engaging in asanas, which are physical postures, and pranayama, breath control, to make sure the body is thoroughly worked and oxygenated right from the very start of the day. And to maintain that physically exerted body, the discipline required is just incredible. You are put on a highly restricted sattvic diet. We're talking pure foods completely stripped of spices, sour ingredients, excess sweets, meat, and alcohol. The entire goal is zero bodily overstimulation. You're also advised to eat slightly less than your full appetite and to chew thoroughly. Couple that with rigorous hygiene, specifically washing and bathing in cold water to keep the nervous system completely grounded. And let's be honest here, nothing kills a distracted mind quite like an ice-cold plunge of 4 in the morning, right? Moving right along to Section 3, mental discipline. The text makes it very, very clear that physical habits alone are not enough. True mastery requires the mind to be rigorously trained and fiercely guarded against idleness. To stop the mind from wandering into destructive or lustful thoughts, these rules insist on a state of constant mental engagement. There is absolutely zero tolerance for laziness or just sitting around doing nothing, because idleness is seen as the ultimate breeding ground for bad habits. But it's not just about staying busy, it's really about the quality of the input. The text strictly mandates studying only high-quality educational books. Any materials, books, or pictures that are obscene or arousing, they must be completely banished. You're essentially putting your mind on a highly restricted, top-tier information diet. But even with a perfect diet in busy hands, well, human nature happens. When faced with suddenly overpowering urges, the text provides a really fascinating psychological emergency brake. It advises instantly absorbing yourself in a physical task. And if that fails, you must vividly visualize yourself standing in the direct presence of highly respected, revered figures, like your deity, your guru, or your parents. The psychology here is brilliant. It leverages deep-seated respect and social conditioning to induce instant, almost automatic self-control. Which brings us to Section 4, Spiritual Practices. This third pillar delves into deep spiritual and ascetic routines that are designed to radically alter how the practitioner actually perceives the world and physical attraction itself. This baseline spiritual routine acts sort of like a protective shield. It surrounds the practitioner with the righteous through satsang while cutting out bad company entirely. Even sleep is highly regulated. It requires a strict ritual of cold water washing and conscious prayer before bed to ensure the mind is anchored. On top of that, the framework builds willpower through mandatory fasting at least twice a month, specifically recommending lunar days like Amavyasa, Punima, or Ekadashi, alongside dedicated daily worship. Now, to further detach the mind from fleeting desires, the text prescribes a pretty profound psychological conditioning. You are instructed to reflect on the impermanence of the world and, critically, to never forget your own death. Western philosophy actually calls this memento mori. By keeping mortality front and center, those temporary physical desires simply lose their absolute power over you. And this leads us to perhaps the most intense ascetic instruction in the entire text. It outlines a literal method to neutralize physical attraction entirely. So instead of the standard worldly view, simply experiencing physical attraction to another person, the practitioner is instructed to consciously deconstruct the human body in their mind's eye. When attraction arises, they must visualize the body purely as a collection of biological impurities: flesh, blood, bone, and excrement. The text explicitly directs the practitioner to view the object of their attraction as a mere vessel of these impurities. It is a radical cognitive restructuring, designed to quite literally kill the root of lust. But you can't just leave a psychological void, right? You have to replace that attraction with something else. So the text instructs the practitioner to actively redirect their mental energy towards meditating on the character of brave individuals, highly disciplined brahmacharis, those practicing strict celibacy, and people who are completely free from lust. Basically, you are training your brain to admire discipline and character over biological aesthetics. Section 5, the ultimate result. So, what is the ultimate outcome of meticulously dedicating yourself to this incredibly rigorous 16-step traditional framework? The text wraps up by stating that if these rules are followed accurately, the preservation of vitality actually becomes remarkably easy. Why? Because the practices bring about a complete internal transformation. This system systematically calms those deeply ingrained bad tendencies. It purifies the heart, and over time, it naturally generates a spontaneous desire to perform good deeds. You aren't just fighting bad thoughts anymore. The text claims that the low, lustful thoughts automatically dissolve on their own. It transforms discipline from a daily, grinding struggle into an effortless state of being. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Now that we deeply understand this rigorous traditional system for self-mastery with its dietary restrictions, cold water exposure, memento mori visualizations, and intense cognitive reframing, we kind of have to look at our own lives. In an era where our phones, billboards, and media are constantly trying to hijack our sensory attention, how do these ancient concepts of intense discipline and sensory control fit into today's hyper-simulating modern world? Could applying even a fraction of this ancient cognitive defense system fundamentally change how you interact with the digital age? It's a genuinely fascinating question to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the 16 rules of Arya Raksha. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.